If you spend a little bit of time on this channel, you know that I always rave about this amp behind me, the Marshall JCM 2000 DSL 100. I've also got a DSL 50 sitting around here. They're just so underrated. A lot of people overlook them when they talk about great Marshall sounding amps. I've done a couple of videos comparing it to different Marshall amps like the classic 2203, a bunch of other Marshalls that I own, as well as the Vintage Modern, which is another great newer Marshall, which I think sounds really good and deserves more attention. But in this video, we're just going to have a look at 5 different things that I think the DSL does really well. For the first couple of clips, I'm going to be playing my YJM Strat, and I'm running the amp into a Marshall 412 loaded with greenbacks. It's one of the tall vintage cabs, and miking it with a Sennheiser 609 microphone going into my Apollo Twin. I'm using a little bit of the Neve preamp emulation on there, and it's straight into Pro Tools with no post. So the way I've got the amp set up at the moment, this is tone number 1. I would call this the big Fendery Twin kind of sound, even though I'm running through greenbacks. You know, normally a Twin would have Jensens, or the older ones had like the Oxford speakers or something like that in them. But I'm setting this up using the kind of classic Fender Magic 6 settings. I have got the presence all the way off, the deep switch and the mid shift are not engaged. I've got the treble at 6, the bass down at around 2, in between 2 or 3, and I've just left the middle in the middle at 5. I've got the volume control all the way up on the clean channel, and I've got the gain at about 6. This is what it sounds like on the neck pickup. So huge, fat, clean sound. I've recorded a lot of clean parts on various recordings with this amp. It's kind of my go-to. I remember, I think we were doing the Ragdoll Here Today album, EP, and it needed some clean stuff, and we ended up going for this amp over a real vintage Twin. So I think that's something it does really, really well. It also works great as a pedal platform. I'm going to connect a couple of different drives and show you just how well it takes pedals. Okay, to start off with, I have my Anarchy Audio Workhorse, which is a clone. I've got the gain all the way up, the output at about 10 o'clock, and the treble control at about 9 o'clock. Here it is bypass, and then I'll kick it on. I'll connect another Anarchy Audio pedal now. This is their FTK. It's a germanium-based drive, kind of like a germanium take on the classic Marshall Bluesbreaker pedal. And this is one loud amp. It's definitely pushing out Twin style volumes. You can hear that there's something in the room rattling, which I haven't fixed because I've got the volume on 10. So that is tone number 1, using it as a super clean Fendery style pedal platform. I'm going to go over to the crunch mode on the green channel, and we're going to have a listen to some edge of breakup tones with no pedals. Okay, same settings. All I've done is turn the gain control up. I've gone over to the crunch mode, and the volume is at noon. I've got the volume control on my guitar at about 7, and when I'm playing with my fingers, it is nice and clean. course, I can turn the gain all the way up and play around with my volume control a little bit more, and it will give me even more dynamic range. So that is nice and crispy, right on the edge of breakup with a Strat. If I swap over to my STR, which has PAF style pickups in it, we get this. Which is nice and rocky. However, I would adjust this for this guitar. I would basically go for plexi style settings, where I'm going to turn the treble up a bit more, I'm going to back the gain off, and I'm going to turn the mid-range right up, with keeping the bass nice and low. And that's the third big tone that this amp does really, really well, is that kind of AC/DC, classic rock kind of crunch. It's kind of got a bit of that Greenback fizziness in it at the moment. It's very dependent on your speaker choice. I tend to like that with Greenbacks. It reminds me of sort of like AC/DC's Power Age album, where you've got that grit in the high end, which I think is super cool and has a lot of character with a humbucker guitar. What we're going to do next is switch over to the red channel. We're going to start with lead 1, and this is essentially how I would normally set this amp up for just a kind of ballsy hard rock tone. Okay, I've basically got all the EQ controls except the presence at 7. I've got the gain at about 3, and I'm on lead 1. This is with the bridge pickup. This is still with Greenback, so what I would do is maybe back the bass off a little bit and engage the deep switch, which does this. So let's have a listen to that with V30s now. I'll go and move the mic onto a different cabinet. Alright, here it is on a Marshall 412 with vintage 30s, same mic, same recording chain, we get this. You can give it a little bit more gain and maybe dial in a little bit more presence with V30s. And I've actually pushed the mid-range a little bit and backed the treble off. So that is pretty cool. The last thing that we're going to do is a chunky modern metal kind of sound. So I'm going to grab my PRS for this, and I'm going to add the Anarchy Audio clone in front as a boost. Let's have a listen to that. Okay, so with the PRS, what I have done is I've left the deep switch on, I've pulled a little bit of the bass down, I've pulled some mid-range out, cranked the treble, and I'm on lead 2. What I've done is brought the gain down, so it's only at about 2. The master is at about 4. Still running through the vintage 30. I'll give you an example with the pedal on and off. Let's play something chunky, shall we? And of course, if you find that too fizzy, what I would do is bring the presence out and add a bit more mid-range. And then right at the end there I switched over to lead 1, which has a lot less hiss going on and it's less compressed. So you may prefer that. And yeah, hopefully that gives you an idea of why I love this amp so much, why I keep it around in the studio and why I've used it on so many recordings. If you enjoyed the video, please hit subscribe, click the little bell so that you get a notification when I upload a new video. And as always, thanks for watching. See you around. Oh, and let me know what you think in the comments. Cheers.